Warning. The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
Wow, what an introduction. Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to the premiere episode of Whispered Insights, working title. So we'll talk more about that soon. My name is Esteban Kolsky, or Esteban Kolsky, if you want to pronounce it perfectly well, but I won't hold you to the pronunciation. And I'm your one of your hosts, or the main host, and part of the co-host, or whatever you want to call it. Today, we're going to have a very, very simple show. We may not even make it to the full hour. Um, I would love for you guys to put comments on this wherever you're listening. I will look to all the comments and I will answer the ones that I can. I will try to address all the issues, but today is more of an introduction than anything else. First of all, as you can probably imagine, this is not going to be the traditional setting for the show. I'm on the road today. I'm coming to you the best possible way that I can. And it's just where we are today. I love the place and I love the setup, but it doesn't really spell out good lighting or good sound or anything like that. So we'll get better on that. This is a work in progress, as we say. So let's get to it. So what are we going to talk about today? First, let's talk about two things. Number one, I hate to talk by myself. So I love conversations. I love back and forth. I love banter. I love debate. I love the idea of actually, talking to people and getting to understand and discuss big topics and big ideas better. And that's kind of going to be one of the premises of the show. Second, and in relation to that warning that you saw before, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and some of the NPR podcasts I listen to will say this show contains curse words and some elements that may not be suitable for all the audiences. They also say if you want a bleep version or a reduced version of the show without offensive content, you can go online and find it. But unfortunately, you're not going to get there. So if you're easily offended, if you don't like curse words, if you don't like people that speak their mind, this may not be the show for you. But I cannot change who I am. So that's just going to be going forward where we are and where we're trying. I will try my best, like I told my therapist a few years ago, not to be so abrasive, but I can't make any promises, bitch. So anyways, bad joke. I know, bad place to start. So let's get started into what we're talking about. What is the show all about? Whispered Insights is a concept that, as I said, is a working title. It's a work in progress. I would love for anybody who's listening and anybody who wants to participate in the idea of further developing the concept, further developing, things as to go through, and all that. Sorry about that. Little blip in there. So as I said, we're work in progress. I love the idea of conversations. What is the show about? This show is going to be a very simple idea. It's about whispered insights. And whispered insights, which I would love for you to tell me how to name it better, is a concept of not just whispering in hushed tones or speaking in hushed tones, which is one of the ideas of whisper, but creating insights that are secretive to just one person or one team or one company. It's about taking the value of an insight and applying it to a specific company or specific situation, right? That's the whole idea there, and that's what we're going to be going for. To do that, it's going to be done in a different way that you normally see. Like I said, I don't like to talk by myself. I would like to have different people helping me on this. I have a slew of co-hosts that are going to help me with this stuff. And actually, one of them is in here right now. And if we can bring my first co-host, Brent, if you're listening. Hey, look at that, Junior Whisperer. Nice. Welcome, Alan Bergson, Junior Whisperer.
You caught me. You caught me with my mouth full.
That's okay. It's okay. So I was just starting to get into the concept of the show, and thank you for being here because, like I said, I hate to talk in the ether, and I love the fact that you and I have excellent conversations. And actually, those conversations were the genesis of this show and this idea of having whispered insights, right? Having the idea of take all the information, condense it into something that applies to a specific insight, a specific person, specific company, and then find a way to channel that. So I would love to have the rest of the conversation with you because you know everything I'm going to say since we talked about it before, and I would love to go forward. But let's start with putting some structure into all this, so it's not just me rambling forever. First of all, the show is called Whispered Insights, like I was saying, because it's not about hash tone conversations, but it's about personalized insights that are actionable to a specific company or a specific person, right? And I would love to have a better name than that if you have one. But what do you think of that? I mean, what do you think of Whispered Insights? Junior Whisperer.
Well, it's if you're going to be a horse whisperer, then you're going to make horses perform better, right? So
Right.
you can be a leader whisperer. Then never mind. See, my jokes don't get any better than this. So
my jokes are actually, I don't know how to go from this. I hate doing these things first time because I don't have a format or anything. But let's start breaking it down a little bit. The genesis for this idea was the fact that the world is composed. Keep in mind, I'm a trained analyst, so everything is composed from layers and tiers and models and everything. But the world is composed of 4 layers of information. One is a global level of information where everything that gets produced in the way the petabytes we produce every day just sitting there for the consumption. The layer below is a filter layer of information where you can actually start focusing on a specific subject. So there's a bunch of information that doesn't apply to enterprise tech, which is probably the biggest point of the show, that you really want to filter out. But even within filter information, you need to get more specific towards an industry or a situation, and that's the third layer. And then the final layer is actually the company or the individual, right? I believe that there's a lot of content being produced at the top that is garbage. I believe there's a lot of filters that are wrongfully applied that deliver more garbage and shiny objects. I believe that at the industry level we start to see some value, but there's not enough frameworks to create value for the different companies and the different individuals. And I believe that there's very, very limited value being produced at the individual level. I wrote about this in LinkedIn earlier. And by the way, everything that I referred to today, there will be links below this after the show that will refer you to all the writings and all the other things that I'm going to reference. But I wrote about this in LinkedIn a few weeks ago, where I wrote a 3-part series that talk about who do you trust, what information you need, and how do you consume the information. That talks about the 4th layer, right? How do you actually get to the information that you need? And it's basically answering the basic questions. I mean, who do you trust? How do you read? What are you looking for? When do you use it, and why do you use it? And if you can answer those 5 questions to a specific individual or a specific corporation, you get to the level of the whispered insights in my model, right? I really don't want to concern myself with the top 2 layers of content. I produce a lot of content that was applicable to the 2nd layer. I produced some content in my life that was applicable to the 3rd layer. And I believe that the role of the person who fulfills the 4th layer has been disappearing steadily over the last few years. I left Gartner about 15 years ago. And when I left Gartner, I saw the decline of the value of the analyst as a trusted advisor and the emergence of the role of the analyst as a producer of mass content for scale. And this is great. For Gartner, it was a fantastic move because they did a 10x growth in value just by being able to publish more content at a general layer. The problem was their customers ended up with no responsible advisors and no responsible content that they could use. So that's one of the problems that I'm trying to fulfill. It's how do you fulfill? How do you create a framework or a model for that for the 4th layer, and how do you fulfill that role for that model in a way that delivers value to the customer? And that's what this show is going to be all about. It's about taking the 3rd layer information, using knowledgeable co-hosts and guests that understand how to transform that into insights, and then create insights, and then eventually apply those insights to specific situations. We won't get to the final part.
Can you repeat those layers again?
The 1st layer is global. It's like content, everything that is produced, petabytes of noise every single day that is produced. 2nd layer is filter content, which is specific to one area, one subject, something like that. 3rd layer is industry or company, depending on how deep you want to go. And then the 4th layer is individual or a specific outcome. So as you go through those 4 layers, we realize that there's truckload of stuff being produced at the top, mostly garbage. Some of the filters that we apply are wrong. So you don't really get a lot of filters. And this is where like AI is going to save the world and going to eat the world. The statements come from, right? And yeah, the third layer is like, more at the industry level, more at the company level, and then finally at the outcome of a specific individual level. And I think that we if we can fulfill the role of creating a better third layer and even creating some content at the fourth layer that can then be whispered as an insight to an individual or an outcome, that would be the idea of the show. And hello, Jesus.
I think in life you have to, there's that saying, you got to be careful what you wish for. There was a time where there were experts and they were resident in universities or government entities or think tanks, and if you wanted to get that information, you had to pay for it. Then we said, oh wait, no, there's knowledge abundance, and now we can open up access to that information and have use it for ourselves to make better decisions. But now we're in a position where there's so much information that it's hard to both separate the signal from the noise, as well as even if you find information that is valuable or has got value in it, it still requires a level of critical thinking and analysis.
And I actually had a conversation over the weekend that was really good for me to apply to this, in the sense that it gave me clarity and validation for what I'm trying to do somehow, which is I talked to a former client of mine. I'm reaching out to a lot of people and talking to a lot of people to define what I want to do when I grow up, right? And we were having a conversation about this, and basically their statement was, I'm drowning in noise and supposed to be information that is applicable to my industry and my company, but it's not. I need to know how I can actually take that information that I need and use that to talk to my team. I need either a person or a company or a framework or a product or something that will take all that and give me the talking points. And he actually said, I tried ChatGPT, but it's garbage. It's very high level platitudes. I mean, it's shit that I cannot use. So how do I actually get that applicable to my show? And that's what I'm trying to that's a solve for why. That's the why, right? The why is like, how do you actually the unknown variable is like, how do we actually end up with content that is applicable to you, your situation, your company, your outcome that you're looking for, that filter all the rest of the noise. And then actually I have a little example I want to bring out at the end, but that's the whole idea. And to do that, I know that I'm not the person to do this. I'm a good person to have conversations with. I'm not a good person to create all these models and stuff. I when I create them and I put them out there, people get all confused because it's like too much to consume. So I need people that can do this and keep me in check. And for that, I have co-hosts, and I have 4 that I'm going to start with. I have guests, and I have 4 already that are confirmed that I cannot share yet because we haven't set the details. And we will go through this on the show. I mean, one of my first co-hosts is the person here with me, Mr. Bergson. And let me do a quick intro, and then you can tell me what you want to do as part of the show. But the reason Alan is here is because we have conversations, sometimes several weeks, sometimes every couple of weeks. And these conversations are basically, we tried it for a while in a show called We Should Have Recorded That. But once we tried to record it, it didn't work very well because we were more trying to fit the show than actually have the conversation. But if we can stick to the conversation, these are fantastic conversations where a lot of my insights and a lot of my understanding comes from. Alan is great at calling my bullshit, and Alan is great at correcting me when I'm going in the wrong direction. And Alan is great in providing additional fodder for my thinking. So that's why Alan is here. We will go through topics in a little while, and Alan will be one of the people that helps me understand how to present the topic better, what we need to discuss, and then end up with something at the end of it. So that's my intro of why Alan is here. So, Alan, what do you want to do?
I've changed my name. I'm now the Model Whisperer.
Model Whisperer. There you go.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, Whispered Insights is a working title, so we can go with anything.
The big question that I think maybe is an overriding sense of this, and we've had some conversations about this, is how do people make decisions? And for the most part, they're making either poor decisions or uninformed decisions. It's not a bad decision if you don't. let me rephrase that. You can make a bad decision because you have all the data and still make it wrong, or you could just have not the either bad data or bad analysis.
Yeah.
And so there's an opportunity, or there's the need to help people navigate the sea of information. I mean, if you're a leader, you've got to know your business, you've got to know what your customers are doing, you've got to know what your employees are doing, you've got to see your product roadmap, and you've got to see the logistics, and then think about, how do I change things and how do I continue to grow? You know, you can't stand still. And I'm going somewhere with this. So I have a mentor, Mike Ross, who loves his statement when he would sit down for somebody in the beginning of a sales meeting. He'd say, "What are your plans for expansion?" And there are two answers to that. Either, "Oh my goodness, expansion, forget expansion. I'm just trying to keep my head above water." And that puts a focus on what they're trying to do in terms of outcomes. Or, "Oh, we have all these great ideas and I really don't know what to do." But either way, it requires some sort of transformation within the organization, some kind of change. We're going to have to help people. We're going to have to put new processes, probably new technology, to make it all happen.
I agree.
And then you're doing all that, but you still have to run your business. And so you can't just pause your business for a couple of months and go do the research and do the analysis. And you're smart, you're running a business, or you're a leader in a business. You got there because you've got skills, but you can't just stop. It's the analogy a lot of businesses use in terms of, trying to change the engines while the plane's flying. Or, it's always a little bit, tough that way. And so how do you navigate that? And this has been a focus of what I've been thinking about since I left my former employer and took I was sabbaticing, similar to you.
We're all done with sabbaticing, dude.
We're done with sabbaticing. But
it's a good idea when you first have it, to have a year for sabbaticing, and then 3 months later you're like, fuck it, I'm so bored, I gotta do something now.
But the question is, how can for me, and I think that for you as well, is how can we help people navigate these decision-making processes, as well as getting a step outside their own bubble, their own thought bubble, their own politics, their own whatever it is.
So there's let's go to some of the comments, Bernd, if you don't mind. Put Jesus's comment first.
Good. I can take a bite of my sandwich.
There you go. So this is why I say I want to have a conversation. I love the fact that you guys provide comments and conversations. So Jesus says, "You can be a whisperer, but many top executives must gain critical thinking skills and stop listening to the noise." And if you don't know Jesus is one of my idols. I mean, the guy, if you ever want to do business in Latin America, you go through Jesus, else you're not going to be successful at it. That's the simplest way to put it out there. And Jesus works with top leaders in Latin America and in the US to deploy technologies related to CX and CRM. And I agree, Jesus is totally right that they need to create critical thinking skills. But then Stesa Cohen, thank you, and Stesa is like a former Gartner analyst from the good old days. She was there when I was there, and now she does a fantastic job covering the banking industry. And she says, part of what whispers can do is how to slice through the noise, and that's what I'm kind of trying to get to with the show. How do you slice through the noise? I mean, you need something. You can't just say, "Okay, I'm going to slice through the noise." If you don't have the critical thinking skills, and it's not your fault because you're a product of the American educational system, then you need to find somebody that can actually help you with that slicing. If you're overwhelmed, if you run a company that produces 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, $200 million, up to somewhere between 10 and $250 million in revenue, you're beyond overwhelmed with everything you have to do. The time to process and slice through the noise is not there. It doesn't exist. If you make more than 250 or so, sure, you can start delegating and bringing in the right leaders that will actually do the work for you. But if you can't, this is the perfect place to use a whisperer. We did a show in this platform with Brent and Paul a couple of years ago where we talked about evangelism. I think that Martin Schneider was there, Bala Afshar, and myself. I think you were part of it, Alan, but you were just starting your evangelist role at your former employer, and a few other people. And what we talk about is the fact that evangelism is not a technology-only role, that everybody should have an evangelist, somebody who understands the company role, can get to the information, process information, and see how to use it. And that's basically the idea of the whisperer. It's like, if you cannot if you don't have the structure or the affordability to have a full-time evangelist, a whisperer is a person that you bring from the outside that would actually help you with that, right? It's more like somebody who knows you and your company and your product and your setup, and then they can help you make sense, go through the comments and make sense and all that stuff. So that's
I'm gonna challenge you on the knows you or your product or your company. I think that that has value, but at the same time, the critical thinking part that Jesus mentioned, hey Nicole, you know, I had a friend of mine who was in the M&A business, and I call it the myth of industry expertise. He said he goes in to talk to a crayon manufacturer, and he says, I'm looking to sell our business, and the guy says, do you have any experience with crayon manufacturers? And he says, absolutely. He says, well, we're a blue crayon manufacturer. Do you have any experience with blue crayon manufacturers? I said, no, I work with green crayon manufacturers. Oh, no, then you can't help us, right? And I think that while understanding the industry is important, I think sometimes even coming in with an open mind and just the being able to ask, look, that's my philosophy, ask good questions, being able to ask questions and maybe even bring a different perspective by maybe, you know, your questions bring up things that people haven't thought of because they're just so, you know, entrenched in either the industry, the category, or the company.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, Nicole is she said, somebody said evangelist because she's an evangelist, and she's a she's the person that we started with Alan and Nicole. We started talking about this role and this model. Was it like 3 years ago? I think 2 or 3 years ago that we started the discussions of what it takes to be an evangelist and eventually become a whisperer and all that stuff. So another person that does this. I want to distract a little bit because I have 3 more co-hosts that I want to introduce before we go a little deeper into this, right? I'm not going to solve everything in one show, thankfully, which is why we do this every 2 weeks going forward. But my 3 other hosts, in like absolutely no order other than my all brain, can put him in this order. The first person that I want to introduce after Alan is like Dr. Lauren Vargas. And if you don't know Dr. Lauren Vargas, you're missing out because she will blush when I say this, but she's probably one of the smartest people I know. No, I'm not going to say she's smarter than I am because that includes 99.9% of the world, but she's one of the smartest people that I know, and I have absolutely fantastic conversations with her. She is a person who basically invented and defined the role of the community at the public level, and then took it into the private level. And when she got tired of that, she wanted to go to a broader world. So she actually earned a PhD in, and I'm going to say this wrong, but I'm sure there's a different title, in museum studies. And she's actually working today in understanding how to actually take museum content and communities and merge them together. And this is absolutely one of the most fascinating things that I've seen because of the scale and because of the potential outcomes for it. And I would love to have Dr. Lauren Vargas join me and have some conversations about how do we bring communities into this, how do we broaden the conversation, how do we actually take the conversation and get it down to actual insights that he can use. She's done tremendous work with different museums in Europe and America, and I want to bring part of that into the conversation as well. Another one of my co-hosts is was it the Bro Hammer is his title, right? John Reed from the Genomica. And the reason that I want to bring John into this is like John and I had several conversations. Again, fantastic conversations. The guy is one of a kind, a true asset to the world of enterprise tech. But we've been talking about how do you produce content and how do you use content. As you know, the Genomica is an online magazine aimed at the enterprise technology market. They have done amazing things with the content that they cover. They stepped away from the sponsored and somebody pays for content and all that stuff, and they actually focus on what they can do. They have what Alan and his friends would call transmedia approach: podcast writing, analysis, interviews. They do reports and they do attend shows and things like that. But he's somebody who knows the way that content should be produced and consumed, and we love to have more conversations about the way executives and anybody looking to get something out of this can consume that content, right? And then the last person is Liz Miller. Liz Miller is with Constellation. research. And I broke my rule there a little bit of bringing people that are attached to analyst worlds or vendor worlds, mostly because, again, if you haven't met Liz, you're missing out. Liz is one of the very, very few people who not only has been an executive, but run the CMO council with tens of thousands of CMOs, looked at her for understanding the role better, understanding what they needed to do and how to do it. And if there's somebody who could be called a CMO or a CXO whisperer, that's Liz. And I want to have those conversations with her as to, like, what matters to CMOs, what matter to CXOs, what is a CEO looking for, and all that stuff, right? Those are the people that I want to bring as co-hosts. In addition to that, I'm tapping into people that know how to talk about data, and tapping into people who know to talk about transformation, talk about uncertainty, talk about decision making. In other words, even if this only goes for the next 3 months, you're going to have the most fantastic time listening to people who know what the hell they're talking about tell you how where we are in the market today needs to change and how to actually change it, right? Topics that we're going to cover are decision making, information processing, technologies, outcomes, strategy, how to actually align your growth objectives with where you are, career forwarding. How do you make your career go to the next step? How do you become a better, whatever level you are, either to the next level or the level that you're in? These are all things that we're going to be discussing in the show. This is a format of the show, co-hosts, people who know, guests, and all that stuff. And then conversations, like, if you can put the actual next comment from Nicole Brent, which is a little long, but I haven't read the full thing of it. But this is the type of things that I want to get. I want to get, people, more about this than I do. You know more about how to do this than you do, because you're doing this every day. I sit high and mighty in my ivory tower telling you everything that you don't want to know. But this is the part that actually makes sense. Simply by asking insightful questions, people often assume you're an expert in a given area. And that's the thing. The questions don't need to be specific to a function or whatever, but they need to be questions that poke holes, right? If I could have my dream job is like, hole poker. I want to go into any strategy and poke holes in it. I want to be a contrarian for hire, where you can bring me in and tell me what you're doing and then tell you what's wrong with it. I don't know anything about the product in your industry. I know, marginal things about it, but I promise you that the questions that I'm going to ask are not directly related to competitive elements of your industry, your product, what this person is doing, what that person is doing, or anything like that. I spent 30 years doing this, and I know what questions to ask in what situations to poke holes into things that work and haven't worked in the past. I have institutional knowledge of an entire industry for 30 years, and I'll shut up now because I hate to talk by myself, but that's basically what I bring to the show. Alan?
Well, I look at asking questions a little differently. I think about what is a good question, and I've had this conversation with my kids when they're going to school. Asking a question that has a factual answer, or asking a question just to flex a little bit about what you know or to show off, those aren't good questions. Asking a question that moves the exploration forward, that moves the conversation forward, that or even provides space for exploration. That's a good question. So I think you're saying the same thing when you say poking holes, but it's about getting people to either think differently or continue along a line of thinking. And so I agree with Nicole. Dale Carnegie wrote a book over 100 years ago, and what he said is, people like to talk about themselves. So if you just ask a lot of questions and listen a lot, people will think you're really smart.
And see, this is what, Brett, if you can bring the second comment from Jesus, it aligns really well here. And by the way, this is one of my secret power skills. It's like I can create conversations from different things. But Jesus says there are two types of whisperers. One that is just a whisper, and the whisperer that is also a Sherpa, right? And that's what you were talking about. It's not only about asking questions, but then how do you make those questions those questions actionable? And that's what I call whispered insights, right? The whisperer who's a Sherpa is a whispered insight approach to it. That's what I want the show to be about. It's like, not just creating the content, not just creating platitudes. There's plenty of charlatans of platitudes out there that will give you, they're like, if you don't solve our employee experience, you'll never have a good customer experience. if you don't actually, AI is not going to take your job. Somebody who knows AI will take your job. That's fucking bullshit. That's just like, platitudes. That doesn't do anything. If you're going to tell me that, tell me what it means to me and tell me how I fix that problem and tell me how I take advantage of that. If you're not going to say that, don't say the rest. That's just more fucking noise. That doesn't put you at the level of an expert. It puts you at the level of noise at the top level only. So can you do me a favor and help me better understand? It has worked well for me. I don't like people, but I'll take your word for it, Scott. And by the way, Scott is doing a Gen AI private chat tomorrow. Reach out to him if you want to participate. I'm going to be a guest on that, but Dr. Michael Wu is going to present his version of like what ChatGPT is, and there's going to be a couple other people, including me. I'm sorry, I'm horrible with names, so I don't remember who else is there. But there's somebody from a AI company and actually the two other guests I think work in AI companies that are going to be creating a panel afterwards to talk about how ChatGPT applies to the world. So that's what Scott is. And Scott works for one of the KN vendors as well. That I won't mention vendors in this show, so nobody will ever know who it is. So,
Esteban, asking questions and asking for help, I think is a new skill people need to learn. Growing up, I know for me, growing up, it was about becoming an expert, and people are going to hire you for what you know. I don't know. Do I want to hire somebody for what they know or what they can do for me here? Just because they had success at some other company doing something, and whatever that measure of success, we don't even know how much they can attribute to what they did. But can they do it here? What are the skills that you need to have?
It's funny how everything comes around, and like dot connecting is a really complex skill, but it's really what we're talking about here, right? And you and I were just in a conversation that I know I cannot promote the person or the conversation, but one of the items that this person said was people are afraid to ask for help because they think they should know what they're asking help with, or they should know what the question that they're asking is. And that's a fantastic insight. I mean, absolutely, truly one of a kind that actually talks to the people that are more powerful, the people that overcome the fear of I should know this, to say I don't know this. And I don't want to become like a self-help guru here, ask for help, be vulnerable, whatever. Like my one of my therapists said, there's the ABC of life: acceptance, compromise, and vulnerability. Whatever. She was in a different world than I am, but I don't care about that. But I care about the fact that it's okay to ask questions and ask for help. It's okay to hire somebody to help. It's okay for somebody to say, hey, you know what? I need you to connect the dots for me because I don't have the time. It's okay to delegate. You want to be a good leader, delegate as much as you can. Trust the people that you delegate to, and then use the insights to make your decision. Don't take what they told you and make your decision. Use the insights that you get to make your decision. And that's where Whispered Insights comes into play. I'll be glad to connect the dots. I'll be glad to go and pick data points and stories and ideas from everywhere, places that are as far as you can take, and then tell you how it matters to you and what it means to you. And then that's an insight that you use with the other insights that you collected from many other people to actually make your decisions. When I was a gardener, that was my role, right? 40% of my role was rubber stamping, You can put that one, Brent, if you want.
I wonder who came up with Irascible.
It was this guy, this New York Jew. What's his name? What was his name? John Berkshire? Was it? No, what was the name? Oh, Alan Berkson. Yes, Alan Berkson. Sorry, shit, it was right in front of me.
Look, when I did my silly little TEDx talk a while back, and one of the skills I identified critical skills for the 21st century. One of them I called synthesis, which is the ability to consume information. We're knowledge abundant. Everything's out there, but can you consume it and then apply it? Years ago, I worked on Wall Street, and we were looking to hire a consultant to do some coding in a language called Clipper. I don't know if anybody remembers Clipper. It was a database. It was a compiled version of DBase.
DBase 3, 3 plus, DBase 4 Paradox, and Clipper and
Clipper.
Fox Press.
So we're bringing in consultants. We're bringing in consultants, and what we did, to test them, we gave them a programming test. We basically give them a computer and say, here, go, write code to see, and we give them, whatever it was, 15, 20 minutes to do it. The entire time, only one person ever completed the program, and he didn't even know Clipper.
Huh.
He was also the only person who said, "Do you have a manual?" He had never used Clipper before. He just he took the manual and wrote the program.
So this was so long ago that I can say this because it doesn't apply. Statutes of limitations for fraud had passed, so I can say this. But in the early 90s, I got myself a job as a Novell certified administrator. Except that I didn't know Novell at all. I knew networks because I did that in college. I knew technology, and I figured how hard could it be. So the first day I show up to work, and they said, "Hey, by the way, we need a new Novell server." This is how long ago it was. Set up for this. Can you do it? And I said, "Sure." Where's the equipment? And I said, "And where are the manuals?" And the guy looked at me. He's like, "Oh my God, you don't know what you're doing." I said, "No, I know what I'm doing. I just don't know what I'm doing with Novell, which is very different." And it took me a day, and everything worked perfectly. It was a RAID 5, beautiful thing, connect. I mean, it worked forever. It never went down after that. But like, the thing is, like, it's not about the concept of knowing the content. It's about knowing what to do, and that's the critical part of this, right? This is the part that like, I'm hopefully, I like to think that that's one of my skills, is being able to like connect the dots and come up with something that is not directly what everybody else will tell you, but it's something that you didn't know. It's a hole that nobody knew how to poke because everybody's thinking in terms of what you're actually specifically doing within the product, within the industry, within the model. And it's stepping outside and thinking outside of the box that provides value. And that's what I would like to explore in the show. That's what I'm trying to do here, right? That's the bottom line.
Well, also, knowledge is a commodity. So if you think people are hiring you because of what you know, then either they're bad hiring managers, or you're sadly mistaken.
I left Gartner in 2008. In 2005 or 2006, I did an interview with the BBC where they were talking about blogging, and I was the blogging expert for Gartner. And my statement, and I'll take it back now, as I did before, I made 3 mistakes in my life, and this is one of them, right? My statement was, we're done with blogging. When everybody can blog, there is like, no value to blogging anymore. And I said that, and the next thing that I did is I pushed for Gartner to actually create blogs, because Gartner analysts didn't have blogs until 2006, 2007, because they wanted to use them same as a research note. They thought that, well, if you give that away for free, then nobody will read the research notes, and that's not the point of it, right? But this talks to commoditization of knowledge. If anybody can write, do you really think that what you know, there's nobody else in the world who knows it? Your value is not as a content producer. Your value is as a dot connector. The whisperer is not the person who can create content and repeat it. The whisperer is not the charlatan of platitudes that can repeat, all these things that everybody keeps saying, and add a little personal story from like the last time they went to the store and they didn't have milk, and how that's a bad thing. The whisperer is a person who can connect the dots and provide critical thinking, outside of the box thinking, that is like a different perspective on things. If not, there's no value to it. There's no value in saying what everybody else said. It's becoming incredibly hard and challenging to be differentiated. And this is one of the problems that analyst firms, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, Constellation, everybody who's out there as an analyst, this is a problem that the analyst firms and the analysts have. Becoming differentiated is becoming incredibly hard. And the content that you produce needs to be produced at a scale, at a speed that you didn't have to before. And you cannot do that in a way that gives value to clients. So then you resort to simple content like waves and magic quadrants and like, lists and things like that don't provide, a lot of value. So, you can put that comment from Jesus, Brent, if you don't mind. And I agree with him. We need both dot connectors and content producers, but they both have different value. The value of content producer get commoditized. I don't want the content anymore.
I don't agree with that at all.
Which part, me or him?
You need both, but the value of content and the value of blogging. I have a different philosophy on blogging. Blogging is not about how many people are going to read your blog. The value of a blog is how many people are going to share it. Because
I disagree. I totally disagree.
It's the way I look at a blog is a conversation. And this is how I look at it from a business point of view. A blog is a conversation that I've had with
a blog is a conversation starter. It's not the conversation itself.
No. But I'm telling you, it's a record of a conversation. We just had a conversation with an industry veteran. I had a conversation with my customers. I had a conversation with a colleague, and
but that's not the whole conversation. That's a part of it. That's a starter.
Yes. Okay. If you're going to nitpick my use of conversation,
I'm not nitpicking. I'm actually going for the outcome of the blog versus
the outcome of the blog is a written record of something that came out of a conversation. And if I'm having a conversation with let's say a customer, and they come with an interesting problem, and I come up with an interesting solution or a valuable insight, I'm going to go write about that. Because if that person had that problem, there were probably a lot of other people who had that problem. Right?
I have never used a blog that way. I'm sorry, I disagree with you, but I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying I disagree. The way I use blogs, to me, are conversation starters. Every blog I ever wrote opened a door that I needed to be open. I mean, to me, it's like when you make a phone call, when you send an email, when you send a text to somebody, and they said, I know who you are because I read what you wrote and I'd love to talk to you more about that. That's what the purpose of the blog is.
And I'll tell you that if I write a blog and someone at a customer or a prospect reads it, or let's say this is a problem that lots of people, that you call in and you're talking to the information gatherer, because they're not the decision maker, they're the information gatherer, right? And we have this great conversation. I tell them all the things that I can do to help, or that my product or whatever we can, and the outcomes. But then they're going to have to translate that and send that back to whoever is the decision maker. But imagine if I had written a blog about the same topic, and after I had the conversation with you, I say, hey, you know that we just talked about here, I've already written about it. Now you can take that blog and share that with the rest of your team, as opposed to you trying to translate it back.
I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that I haven't seen that being done. Maybe we're talking at different levels, and that's what it is, right? I mean, at the executive decision-making level, right? You may share that with somebody that you delegated this to, because to have them consider as a point of view, but it's not like share it, have a conversation, and then tell me what you want to do. It's more like, this is just one data point. This is an insight.
How many times when you were working at a vendor, how many times did somebody say, hey, I read this cool article and here's a summary, or I read this cool article, here's the article?
How many times have you read it?
I always read it, at least to start.
Okay, then I don't. Then I don't, because that's what I'm saying is at a different level. A person at an executive level position doesn't have the time to read it, or they may peruse through it and capture a couple ideas.
I'm just saying,
yeah, that's fine. And then pass it to
if
somebody
the person
else.
tells me why, I mean, look, my motto is to share is human, to give context divine. If you just share something with no context, there's not a lot of value there. But if I share it and give a piece of my understanding and why it's important.
This is my goal for Whispered Insights. Whispered Insights is the next step beyond all this stuff we're talking about. It's like, you want to share it, you want to talk about it, whatever. But once you actually capture that insight from all the content, all the context and the content and the intent and everything, once you capture the insight, is what do you do with that? How do you use that within a framework that allows you that supports your decision making? And then if not, how do you use that to delegate to an internal or external evangelist or whisperer, or whatever you want to call it, that actually helps you with the actual data points that you need to make the decision? This is the last.
Here's a whispered insight for you, Esteban. Here's a whispered insight. If I'm talking to a senior leader or a CEO, I would tell them, instruct your team that if they want to share information with you, they can't just blindly share it. They have to give it context. That's a value, right? And that'll make them more effective, because they'll understand if it's even worth reading, and they'll also get the opinion, insight, analysis from whoever is sharing it, and it'll teach these people that they have to do a little homework before they share something with the CEO.
And so let's take that one step further, right? So that's an insight. The whispered insight would be, for this to be valuable to you and your position and your company and your decision making, these are the pieces of context that they need to provide. Not just like, hey, this is what we're talking about, or this is the project we're implementing, but this is the 2 or 3 or 4 things that matter to the company right now. You know, that you actually have to, like, that matters. So like, don't just send me something that you're going to share with me within the context of this is for this project. Tell me, this I read, I thought about the project, I think that this is what actually matters to us.
Here's my takeaway.
By the way,
here's a couple of paragraphs from
exactly
what I wrote that are specifically pertinent.
And this is related to these other 2 things. And I guess what? I just connected the dots for you, and I literally left the fucking ball bouncing in front of the goal that is not protected. All you had to do is push it in, right? This is your decision making. That's a soccer thing.
Sports analogies.
Yeah, soccer. I'm from Argentina. What do you want? I grew up with this shit.
So it's football.
I grew up with this shit. Yeah, it's football for those of you.
That's okay. I've been watching Ted Lasso, so I've got football.
Yeah. Goldfish memory, whatever the hell. Actually, the last couple episodes were back to the good part of the first season, but in the last season, but some of the thing in the middle was just like modeled very much so like everything else. I'm just always fascinating. I know this is a digression, but I'm fascinated by shows that should be 1 season, right? There should be 1 season and turn into 3 or 4 seasons because they were so successful that they want to make more money out of it. So, by the way, if you're an executive, never do that. If it's successful, keep growing it, but don't like just repeat it just because it made money. That's a whole different conversation. Anyways, we're coming up to like I have about 10 minutes left or so. I told Brent I don't think I could make 45 minutes of this. Obviously, we can make a lot more by having conversations, but we're not going to have something at the end of this other than like, this is what the show is going to be about. This is the model. This is what we're going to be talking about. This is what we're going to be trying to produce. I love participation. I love comments. I love, I'm available on LinkedIn. Send me a message. If you have my email or my phone number, text me. I think my email is on LinkedIn, so you can actually go through that and email me from there. I don't connect to people in LinkedIn because I'm an asshole, but you can follow me. And if you really, really want to connect, send me an email and we'll talk about it and we can connect. But I'm not on LinkedIn to grow my network. I'm on LinkedIn to have conversations with people that are curated because they're going to be great conversations. And yes, Alan, I don't know who I'm missing out because I don't connect to people, but I'm okay with that. I live with the pain of not connecting.
No, I'm with you. To me, the value of my LinkedIn network is a curated feed of and as well as a network of people that if somebody says, hey, can you introduce me to Esteban? If I have no idea who you are because I randomly connected to you 5 years ago, then that's really no value to anybody.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sure you do too. I get all these requests on a regular basis. The only ones I read is if somebody writes something.
Yeah.
And then if they generally write something, that's very self-serving, so I ignore those. And every once in a while, somebody is clever or interesting.
If it's not self-serving, I don't understand, what it is. But anyway, so I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to offend some of my friends. So Brent has another idea for the title. I'm not disagreeing, Brent. I think that it would it would probably change the concept of the show, but I do agree. George.
That's Michael like opening up a restaurant saying poison chicken sandwiches. I mean, come on. Careless whispered insights.
You spent 2 hours talking about opening a restaurant this morning. That's a whole different conversation. So there's one more thing I want to do before we go away, and like I said, we'll put a lot of links down there afterwards, and I will put some more comments, and I love to hear what you have to say. But I was trying to figure out, how to exemplify what I'm trying to do here, right? It cannot be the regular content. It cannot be the same concepts and the same commoditized knowledge and everything. So I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm driving and when I'm home bored. My content consumption revolves around 2 things: poker videos on YouTube and podcast on my phone, depending on the time and date and whatever. So if it's not about those 2 things, it's highly unlikely that it's something that I choose to do. I do choose to do other things for work, but not also a lot of things. So that's a whole different conversation. But I was listening to a podcast on NPR that is called Starting a Revolution. And I put the link down there so you can actually follow. I recommend it to Alan. I think that he listened to it. Yes, you think it's a good thing?
It was great.
It was great. It's really well done. It's really well narrated. Starting a Revolution is documenting what happened in Olympia, Washington in 1991. And there were two things happening in Olympia, Washington in 1991. One, Kurt Cobain, and then the birth of grunge and what would they call it, complain rock, and like the world sucks and we need to do something, but I don't know what to do, blah blah blah. And we all know how it grew to be nothing to be truly a societal differentiator, and how he actually grew an entire generation of people that were okay with grunge and complain rock and all that stuff, and how that became actually the genesis of change in many aspects of society. But there was another part of that revolution, and that was called Riot Girl. And girl is spelled GRRRL, right? And Riot Girl was the birth, actually not the birth, no, let me rephrase that, was the one of the best exemplifications of femme punk, what is called femme punk or female punk. Basically, women that actually wanted to embrace punk but felt out of place in a traditional punk place. Because punk was, violent, because punk was like, male dominated, chauvinistic, white supremacist, blah, blah, blah. But they wanted the concept of punk and revolution, but they didn't want to do it that way. And that's where the concept of like Riot Girl emerged from. And Riot Girl had its origin in three bands, Bikini Kill, Bradmobile, and Heavens to Betsy. And if you ever heard to this, actually, I recommended those to my daughter, who's a neo-punk pop aficionado, who listens to things like, Rage Against the Machine and My Chemical Romance, which are modern examples of the same thing. And she agreed that this is like, the type of music that she loves, and that is femme rock today and all that stuff. But those three bands basically started with the whole concept of like, they created a manifesto called the Riot Girl Manifesto that set the value of women in the workplace and the marketplace and in society like it had never been said before. Basically, I cannot quote it, but you'll have a link down there that you can go and look into it. That basically said, we're not going to be marginalized and put aside. We want to be, valuable members that have our own thing, and this is what we're talking about, and that's what the songs were, right? One of the other things that emerged from Riot Girl was the concept of zines, or unstructured, Kinko's-made newsletters that were distributed door to door. And I'm sure that all of you who are old enough to have been at that time, they have your own zines that you read, and some of you might even have copies left over in your attics or garages or in your mementos boxes, and that's fine. And one of the zines,
some of
and
us might have produced one.
Huh? You produced one?
Some of us might even. I had a zine.
There you go. I'm trying to find this thing. I have so many tabs open. I cannot get it, all that. But the drummer for Bikini Kill, whose name escapes me, and I cannot find it really quick right now, produced a zine. In the zine, she actually talked about a concept that I think is 1,000% applicable to what we're talking about, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. This is where you go outside of like the traditional information to find something that is applicable. She talked about a concept which she called the impetus of imperfection, which when I listened to the podcast and I listened to that and I started looking online, it completely blew my mind how much what she's talking about like changing society, making a place for women, revolution, punk, changing the world, and how the impetus of imperfection, manifested through zines makes sense. The impetus of imperfection means you're never going to be perfect before you implement it, but the actual act of implementing something that is imperfect and creating an impetus, a momentum, a forward moving force is what actually gets the things done. And if you look at where we were in 1991 and where we are today in relation to the position of women in society, in relation to revolution, we made steps. We're nowhere near where we need to be, but we made steps. But the impetus of imperfection is what actually got it done. If we would have waited until like everybody agreed on what needed to be done, everybody agreed on what the new role of the women should have been, everybody agreed on what revolution needed to happen, and then implemented when everybody was in agreement, nothing would ever happen, right? So yes, there you go. Thank you, Brent. That was one of the articles I was going to paste below. But The impetus imperfection is a great statement for anybody who's trying to make decisions today, because you're never going to have perfect information. You're never going to have perfect content. You're never going to have everything you need aligned in the right way. You're never going to have the right timeline. I mean, if it takes you 9 to 12 months to select a software product and 2 more years to implement, you're taking 3 years before you can do something. You're really going to make a decision now and wait 3 to 4, 5, 6, 10 years to implement, or you want to implement it and like we used to say, shoot from the hip, right? There's a great scene in a great American movie called Up Periscope, where Kelsey Grammer is the captain. Yeah, you know the movie? Great. Kelsey Grammer is the captain of a submarine, and he gets commissioned to use an old-fashioned diesel submarine to show how they can penetrate the vast American superiority of like nobody can penetrate our networks, right? And one of the assignments that he has is to shoot 2 missiles to show that he won. And then apparently to shoot a missile, you need to have a formula, like, distance and speed and current and all that stuff. And one of the lines that he actually says, he shoots the first missile, and then, he's going to say, okay, we got to shoot the second missile. And the officer says, we don't have a formula. He's like, I don't have time for a formula. I'll shoot from the hip. And he shoots, and actually, obviously, because it's a movie, he hits us perfectly straight on, and it works and everything. But shoot from the missile, shoot from the hip, impetus of imperfection. These are concepts that I want to embrace and actually bring to the concept of the Whisperer Insights, because you're never going to have everything you need, but you need to have people that you can trust to provide you as much as you can possibly have to make the right decision. That's the whole concept that we're talking about here. If you're going to wait for everything to be perfect, for the timelines to agree, everybody to say that you're right, for Gartner to rubber stamp your plan saying that it's okay, for McKinsey to give you the strategy that takes 2 years to build, blah, blah, blah. If you're going to wait for all the bullshit, you're never going to make it happen. And there's nobody in this world that knows more than the executive what needs to happen, what needs to be done. So that's the thing, is that's Whisper Insights. You can collect as much information. You can have somebody you trust provide a whispered insight to you, and then you make a decision. That is what I want this show to be about over the next whatever months to let me be here. The FCC has been notified. There's 7 words that you're not supposed to say. I think I said 3 in the content of this podcast. So if they come back and they shut me down, oh well, whatever. Fuck it. It's only money. So, which, by the way, it's a statement that I make before I call every bet on poker that I shouldn't be calling. I always said, fuck it, it's only money. And 23% of times I'm right, and that is 67% of times, 77% of times I'm wrong. But the 23% make up for the 77% that I'm wrong, because fuck it, it's only money. You do it, you fail, you learn, you do it again. That's the world we live in. Anyways, that's my closing on what I'm trying to do. That's an example of what I'm going to be showing. Talk about topics, talk about my co-host. I talk about everything that I'm supposed to talk about. My mother whisperer is gonna, have the final insight into this.
I think that was a great summation. The whole idea that life's uncertain.
Thank you.
If you think you have a handle on it, you're probably wrong. And tomorrow you'll have to think about it again. And that's the sooner you get used to that, the more effective you'll be.
So I have a minute. I will do this in 2 weeks. We'll advertise it on LinkedIn. We'll put some links below. We'll put some topics somewhere else. Thank you, Alan, for stepping in at the last minute and enabling me to not talk by myself, which I hate to do more than anything in this world. It was a great conversation. It's the model for the show. And with that, I don't have yet a signature closing picture or anything like that. We're going to work on that, Brent. But
this is what you should do. You ready? You ready?
Yeah.
See you later.
See you later.
No, but whispering.
Oh, sorry. Where's my fucking microphone? See you later, alligator. We're out. Thank you, everybody.